All right, so Pisces, this one's for you. This is Tarot Lumination with your love and relationship report for October 2017. Okay, now this particular spread is geared towards relationships that are more or less in play, that have some investment going already. Um, there's a new separate playlist for singles. Okay, so don't worry. And we're using what I think of as a crucible spread. It's on the understanding that there's you, there's the other, and the third entity, the relationship itself, which has a life and an energy of its own. So we're going to look into all of that and see what the story tells. All right? I'm going to try and keep it very simple. Okay? No jumpers, no flyers, no oracles, no reversals. And we'll see what the story says. Cards were already well shuffled in advance, but I'd like you to be a witness. Okay, we're going to cut now and then do your reading. Hope things are going okay for you, Pisces. Let's have a look. This would be you and your energy. This would be the other. Okay, and this is going deep inside of you. This is going deep inside the other. And this is going to the relationship itself, the very core of things. And this is the momentum here. We're going to look at this card in a moment. Can you see this shape here? It's like a crucible. A crucible is a very strong container that can endure massive stress, the things that can occur in a relationship. And so in a healthy relationship, both parties invest in the crucible. They invest in the relationship itself as opposed to relating like so. All right? So I hope that makes sense. Let's get into it. First, let's have a look. The weather, let's see what's like permeating the whole situation right now. Wow, there is hope. There is hope, Pisces. Believe it or not, there is hope. So, this is a beautiful card to have surrounding the situation, Pisces. It's almost like no matter how rough things might be, no matter how challenging, confusing, or weird, there's always hope. There's this indication. This is almost like a message from heaven above to let you know that no matter what the challenges might be, Pisces, everything is exactly as it should be. There is hope, there is light, and everything's going to be okay. Even though it might not feel like it, even though it might feel just the opposite, okay? Because things happen for a reason, and we're looking for, with here, the star is radiating very, very high frequency energy from heaven. It's very, very, very high frequency. This is almost like soul energy, okay? And it's there for you, and it's very strong, but it might be extremely subtle as well, okay? Just so that you know. All right, let's have a look. Let's go in here. What about you? What's going on, Pisces? Oh dear. Well, don't freak out too much. This is the Nine of Swords, and if you are feeling this way, the imagery is pretty self-explanatory here. If you're feeling kind of like this poor person here, where there's a lot of, let's just say, out and out misery and anxiety, and it's very evident, and even though you might not be admitting it, perhaps deep down, there is this is the card of like deep anxiety, nightmares, and all those fearful, scary monsters under the bed kind of energy that keep you up at night that can be very confusing. They can be very, very draining as well. They can leave you very disoriented. Now, if this is not the way things are for you, and it feels more like this kind of energy, it could indicate that these energies are there nevertheless, but they're being exposed and released in such a way that is very, let's say, honest and true and very factual. And They are becoming apparent for a reason, because in let's just focus on you for the moment, but uh, it can be about, the whole energy of, you have to reveal it to heal it. So it might be that in the context of a significant relationship, that if you're really honest with yourself, you might be at certain like trigger points in the relationship, you might be feeling some extreme stress and anxiety, even though other things might be going okay. There's one component of you which is, let's just say, deeply stressed out, and this needs to be acknowledged, and this is coming to the surface. This is becoming apparent. It is becoming something that you could put into words. You could actually name it. And that's what I think is really important here. Like, if you are very good at, let's say, deceiving yourself or staying in denial and pretending there's absolutely nothing wrong and just floating along, and yet there is something in your body that's telling you deep anxiety, and it looks like it might be up to the point where you could actually name it exactly for what it is. And that would be extremely healing, to actually, instead of just living the symptoms of anxiety, to be actually strong enough to look it right in the face and name it. What is it that's stressing me out so much? What is that thought? What is that perception? What is that experience about the relationship? What is this past history? What is this fear? What is this, whatever it might be that's causing the anxiety? Finding a way to name it, and like bringing it into stark realization. So in a way, that's good news. I'm trying to put a positive spin, obviously, for you Pisces, because I don't want you to be overwhelmed by this. I'm trying to help you to understand that there is all this hope. And this hope is the understanding that things are just the way they should be, because they can't be any other way. And that's good. Even when it doesn't make sense, even when there's no evidence, no proof. That's the beauty about the star card, is that it's a message that, uh, like, let's say, divine intervention is available to you, even if you don't understand it, if you're not aware that it's there. Uh, the the energy of heaven is there anyway, even if you feel like this. So it might be really good that you're feeling like this, because sometimes tremendous healing dynamics can occur inside a relationship, especially an intimate relationship where it's a chosen relationship, where two parties have deliberately chosen to bring their heart energy together in order to further the energy of love. Love is as love does. So if you're making active commitments where it's all about, uh, we choose each other in order to willfully go beyond ourselves and extend ourselves beyond our comfort levels in order to facilitate the spiritual advancement and healing of ourselves and each other. So that might be exactly what's going on here, by revealing what needs to be healed. The relationship might be revealing inside of you deep stressors that need to be revealed in order to be healed. Okay, what about the other? Oh, look at this. I mean, you gotta laugh at the imagery, right? I mean, seriously, Pisces, what is going on here? I don't know why I'm laughing so much. But anyway, so Pisces, you might be dealing with a significant other who is going through their own version of the same thing, but they've already reached the end. They've said enough is enough. Okay, let's just accept it. Um, this kind of pain, stress, anxiety, fear, anguish, betrayal, deception is not acceptable in a relationship. And it's about time both parties acknowledge that, and make that very apparent between ourselves and each other. And with the significant other here, this chosen one, this person of interest, Pisces, it can indicate that they've already made the decision that enough is enough, and it's not going to happen anymore. They're not going to allow that to happen, especially if there's a dynamic going on where your own stressors, your own anxieties are impacting the other to the point where it just been just accumulating and accumulating and piling up and piling up and piling up. And they've been doing a good job of being a pincushion for you. And they might have made a decision, that's not healthy. That's just like a one-way thing here. And uh, this person may be saying, like, I don't want to be that anymore. I don't want to be your pincushion, Pisces. I don't want, it's not my job. That's not what happens in a relationship, in a healthy relationship, at least not what they would want. The indication might be here is that a lot of stresses have come to the surface in the context of a significant relationship, Pisces, to the point where things become very stark, very, very clear about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And they've already made a decision that certain things are absolutely not acceptable anymore. This is not permissible anymore. They are done with this. They are done with this. It doesn't mean they're done with you. It just indicates that they are done with this particular dynamic. This is, we're just doing one reading here for October. And, there's time. We move into October, through October, and outside of October. But it looks here from this reading that this has become the issue of the moment. And it's like, one of those like kitchen table meetings between the two parties where you're just coming out with it, all of the stressors and the anxieties, and they're saying, okay, well, that's great, Pisces, but enough is enough. You know, in other words, it's not all about the other party being here for you, Pisces, in order for you to dump all your stuff on them. And uh, it's not it doesn't go back and forth that way. In other words, if you, Pisces, have been on the receiving end of a lot of their anxieties and stresses as well, that can be equally as unhealthy and not a lot of fun, frankly. But the visuals here are indicating to me that this is coming up to the surface now to the point where it can't be ignored and it has to be acknowledged, and it has to be dealt with. And they've already made that decision. Enough is enough is enough. So that could just their decision to call it out and say enough is enough, that could increase your anxieties and stressors even more, like the fear of being like pushed away. That could just be one of these items of stressors here, okay? Like the fear of a potential breakup or something. Something as awful as that. And maybe that's appropriate. We don't know. Maybe there's such a high level of stress in the relationship that the subject of pulling apart has, become one of these things that have stressed you out. Again, I'm not trying to scare you, Pisces, but it's a thing. Obviously, stresses are coming to the surface here. Let's go deeper inside of you. Okay. So with the High Priestess energy here, my feeling is that you're doing your very, very best, Pisces. You really, really are. And to some degree, you don't really understand what's going on, because it feels to me that you've kind of reached the limits of your abilities to understand and figure out what's going on. With the High Priestess here, it feels to me that you've made your best efforts to be the ultimate highest vibrational frequency version of yourself. And yet there is still the energy of mystery here. This is a card of great mystery, and it's a card of great serenity as well. And it's a card of very high spiritual knowledge, spiritual capabilities, spiritual capacity, spiritual goals, spiritual intentions, and spiritual ways of being. So deep inside of you, Pisces, that would be very uh, let's say, congruent with your own natural state of being anyway. And so you might literally just being an absolutely pure Pisces at this moment in time. And it just happens to be that this is how it is. There is you in your deepest soul self being the ultimate Pisces, the highest vibration Pisces, which happens to include, let's admit it on the surface, a whole pile of issues that are unpleasant and unwelcome, and that where there's kind of no going back, okay, where it's become starkly apparent. And you know how This isn't an astrology channel, okay? But you've just come out of September with that massive, massive wall of Virgo energy right at the end of September. At one point, for about 5 or 6 hours, there were five planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all squashed into Virgo from about 0 to 28 degrees. So that's tremendous pressure on you, Pisces, which might have brought all this to the surface. You're still holding yourself intact, still being, uh, let's say, very, very true to yourself. But in being true to yourself, you are admitting some things that are not pleasant and not fun. So that actually could be, let's just say we make the best of it. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go deep inside the other. Well, my feeling here, Pisces, is that we're dealing with a significant other here who's made very bold decisions to say enough is enough because they're not willing to take it anymore. It doesn't mean it's the end, but it's like they're holding their ground. If there is a dynamic in your relationship right now, Pisces, where it's like a pressure cooker and things are just built up and up and up and up to a crescendo here, where your own, let's say, pain and suffering is being reflected back to you directly from a significant other, which is very frequently what happens in the context of a very significant relationship. If you understand the energy of being a mirror, where you are a mirror for the other and the other is a mirror for you, and the other person here is simply being a very good mirror, but they are also, which is one of the most valuable gifts you can possibly and ever have in a relationship, being in a relationship with someone who's willing to be that mirror for you right up to the most challenging moments where you want to smash the mirror and yet the mirror stays intact. That would be the energy of having a very strong relationship where you can endure these kind of intense pressures without the relationship collapsing. Like the crucible of the relationship, the structure, the bowl in which it all happens. So it looks like they've made a decision to own themselves, retain themselves, put themselves in a position of absolute authority and dignity and self-respect, where they are claiming their their sovereignty of self under possibly under intense pressure from you. In other words, your own stressors uh, may be getting reflected back to you by the other, and it's reached a real pressure cooker point, and it's now spilling out here into October, where it's at the surface now, and there's no way to deny it. And you're just being true to you, to yourself, to the other, and the relationship. So in a way, it's very, very pure what's happening right now. It's very, 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 very pure, but it's also very challenging in some ways. And it looks like in order to honor the relationship, honor you, it looks like the other has made a very firm decision to stand their ground. In other words, no matter how bad it gets, they are not going to allow themselves to, let's see, be at the mercy of your own inner turmoil, your own evolutionary journey, the pain that goes with the process of evolution. They are holding strong to themselves, their sovereignty of self, deliberately being willing and ready and able to withstand tremendous emotional turbulence and not let it phase them. So, my perspective from Tarot Illumination here, Pisces, is that you're very lucky to have a person here who is willing to hold their ground, be there, hold themselves together, hold their integrity together. That's like a very, very determined decision to be a very, very strong, indestructible, good mirror for you, Pisces. So in some ways, that's a gift. No matter what kind of stresses are happening here, you might consider, uh, it might be an idea to think of the situation as a truly blessed situation where a significant other here is under tremendous stress themselves in the context of this relationship, but they are absolutely determined that they are not going to be destroyed by this. And that includes the relationship itself. It feels like there's no threat to the relationship itself here, but there is a lot of pressure, and it needs to be acknowledged. And my perspective is that they're doing the best thing they possibly could to be that strong and to hold their integrity, hold themselves as an individual, so you don't get that kind of codependency thing, so you don't get that type of situation where both parties it just turns into a cat fight, where this could just turn into like instead they are being very, very dignified, holding on to their own self-respect, their own identity, their own dignity, their own sovereignty of self, and saying enough is enough is enough. Now what is going on? Okay, let's get it all out there. Let's have a look at the relationship itself. Okay, it might be just it's reached breaking point. It is under a lot of stress. Let's just say it. I don't know if this is true for all of you Pisces. If this is feeling very strange for you, please watch for your sun, moon, and rising, and maybe this will make sense, because maybe a lot of what we're talking about here is under the surface and it's bubbling up to the point where the relationship itself becomes burdensome. In other words, the crucible, the structure of the relationship itself is under massive pressure to the point where it's reaching breaking point, almost like, an earthquake, like where things, uh, you know, you get that scary feeling like, oh my gosh, is this all going to fall apart? But I feel here that it's okay for this to be this way because it feels very honest and it feels very, very true. And it would make total sense if the other person is determined to maintain their sovereignty of self rather than let the relationship collapse. In other words, they are trusting that the crucible of the relationship itself is strong enough to withstand this intense pressure. And they are holding that. In other words, it's almost like they are deliberately holding the relationship to be true and solid and intact for your benefit. Of course, it's for them too, because they're probably learning tremendous things out of this dynamic that's happening with you, Pisces, at the same time for themselves. By the relationship itself is essentially putting them in a corner where they are realizing, that's it. That's it. Enough is enough is enough. So let's have a look. So it puts the relationship itself to breaking point. Okay, doesn't mean it's over. It just means there's a lot of pressure inside the relationship at this moment in time. That's all. Okay, remember, this is linear time we're going through here. This is not the ultimate first and last reading of all time. It doesn't mean everything's falling apart and it's broken and it's never going to be the same again. Not at all. Not at all. Okay, so you understand they're still carrying. They still have the strength to carry. It's just that, the question is, are we ever going to make it? Are we going to make it? Let's have a look. Let's see what the momentum is here. Oh, well, I'm actually kind of relieved to see this. With the Six of Pentacles here, what I'm feeling for you, Pisces, is that despite this, and thanks to their sovereignty of self, and thanks to you holding true to yourself, it feels like, yes, the relationship might be under tremendous stress, under tremendous pressure, but what it's doing is it's bringing out everything that needs to be addressed in such a way that it actually creates a balancing effect. With with the Six of Pentacles here, it's an understanding that this would be very, very tangible physical evidence going on, like coming to the surface now of what needs to be understood, what needs to be balanced out in the relationship itself. And this could not have happened without the full exposure. In other words, without all the pressure mounting up and being released and being acknowledged and being open, and then putting both of yourselves at the mercy. In other words, putting both of your good selves, your strong selves, your loving selves, at the mercy of the relationship itself. In other words, just, let's say, basically trusting without any evidence at all, that things are still divinely blessed in some way, even though you might not understand what is going on or why it's going on, and they might not understand it all either. But the energy around you is there to tell you that don't give up. There is hope, and you don't have to understand the nuts and bolts of how and why. You just have to know. And the circumstances are saying everything's fine. You might be going through massive stress, but you need to know that everything is exactly as it should be. It might feel like insanity and nonsense and intense pressure leading up to the breaking point, but that's how you kind of achieve balance. It's almost like the alchemical relationship goes to a pressure point and then it goes, and then the pressure is released and balance is achieved. But it's evidential, physically evidential to both sides, both parties, where whatever severe imbalances were happening here in the relationship finally become resolved and brought back into harmony and balance, where both parties understand at a much deeper, more physical, evidential level that the it's understanding the energy of giving and receiving. It's the understanding the energy of reciprocity. As you give, so shall you receive. And that it's very, very important to balance things out and appreciate each other at a very, very high frequency. And then to realize that, my gosh, we have put our relationship under tremendous pressure, but the relationship is still there. And there's a deep realization that, wow, this could actually be a massive learning opportunity for us to find balance again by releasing all this stuff, admitting it, holding to our own highest selves, and admitting we've got all this other stuff going on, and trusting, knowing, even without any evidence or any proof, nothing, that the evidence will be there. It will show up. It will become apparent. And then essentially you get to a point where harmony is restored and everything settles to a point of equilibrium. In other words, you can get back to the dynamics of giving and receiving. Like, let's say this is all over. They say, in other words, like, you know what, honey? I'm glad we got through all that. What can I do for you now? How can I help things get back to balance? And you say, well, I'm really glad we had this too. I was going to ask you the same thing. What should we do now? How are we going to bring things back in balance? What would it take? We need evidence. Let's prove this. Let's make it happen, okay? So that's what I'm feeling for you here, Pisces. I hope you get something out of this. Hope you make sense of it. Please reinterpret however you want for yourselves and watch for your sun and moon rising and have an awesome October, okay? Bye-bye.